Hello and welcome to the second episode of the DGAR Ruck podcast on our YouTube channel. This interview with All Blacks legend Sean Fitzpatrick was conducted around a month or so ago and released on our audio platforms of iTunes and SoundCloud. Just to remind you, you can find all 20 episodes of the DGAR Ruck podcast via these platforms by clicking on the links in the section below. But for now, here is the interview with Sean Fitzpatrick in full, and we began the conversation by talking about his new role with the Scarlets. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Nice to be on the podcast. Basically the start of lockdown. Actually, they sort of approached me, and I went through the whole process and sort of lit the fire really to get involved. And we're sort of going through a reset at the moment in terms of professional rugby. And I was there right at the start, 25 odd years ago in '95 when the game went professional. And we haven't really had an opportunity to sit back and push the reset button or analyse what we've done well and what we haven't done well. And, I think the decisions that are going to be made in the next months, years, are going to be crucial in terms of the future of our great game. And to have a part in that, it's something that I am looking forward to.
And I think you worked with the Harlequins in 2008, I believe. Why was the right time to be a Scarlet?
Well, I obviously had a good look at Scarlets, and I'm still involved with Harlequins, who are an amazing club, great owners, and they've got in terms of the future, they're very similar to what the Scarlets are trying to do in terms of become a global brand. Become the best they can be, and hopefully if we can get this global window right, which World Rugby is working on at the moment, club rugby will become a huge part of World Rugby, and that's really important, that we look after our products. And over the years, the club rugby has been devalued because of the international game. And losing players out of your club teams is just devaluing the Pro 14, the Premiership, which is not sustainable.
And what will your role with the Scarlets entail? Because you look at the Saracens now, and even though they're going to be in the Championship next year, they're still going to be one of World Rugby's biggest products, and this is what clubs are these days. And I think they've got a friendly against the Stormers coming up, which is going to be really lucrative. Is the plan to get Scarlets noticed on a global stage now, or?
Very, very much so, which is a good thing, to help grow the Scarlets brand, and that's one of my things that I'll be involved in is helping to grow the Scarlets brand globally, whether it's through America, whether it's through New Zealand, and those sort of things, because that's I want to be involved in an organisation that's hugely ambitious, and the Scarlets are that. They've really spelt that out to me. They have a great board, they have good people, and I think that's crucial. To have good people running organisations, and the Scarlets are a team that probably are capable of achieving more, and it's just about having the building blocks in place when World Rugby hopefully sorts out this global calendar.
And I saw some of your quotes on the Scarlets website talking about the history of the club and how similar the culture is to the one in New Zealand. What's your earliest memories of playing in Wales?
Well, probably my earliest memories was as a little boy, really. Obviously watching the British and Irish Lions in New Zealand in the early 70s. That really lit a fire in terms of the Gareth Edwards of the world. 77 when the Lions came back, and the Phil Bennetts of the world were playing. And, Barry John and JPR Williams and JJ Williams, Graham Price, all those names were just names that we, running around the schoolyard or the backyard at home playing rugby with my brother. I loved being Gareth Edwards. He loved being Brian Williams. And that was just the way it was. And then, having my father who played against the Welsh in '53 at Cardiff Arms, I'd be up at 3:00 in the morning with Dad watching, the '78 game, the centenary game at the Arms Park, and just dreaming, I suppose, like every New Zealand boy in those days was doing, of possibly one day running out on Cardiff Arms, and the sound of the singing, and which we didn't have that singing in New Zealand. So to get that opportunity in '89, when we toured Ireland and Wales, to run out on Cardiff Arms was a very special memory, and then to travel around all the valleys and the clubs, and it meant so much to me as a young boy growing up, and then lucky enough to become an All Black and be able to tour like so many All Blacks have. And as you said, Wales is very similar to New Zealand. It's our national sport, as it is in Wales. We have a saying in the All Blacks: every man and boy would change places with you tomorrow. And I'm pleased to say that's still the case, and I'm sure it's the same in most parts of Wales.
And as Welsh supporters, we've been baying for a victory over the All Blacks since it was 1953, nearly 70 years. But what, in your opinion, is it going to take for Wales to close that gap?
I think they've made great strides in doing that. They obviously had a sort of late '80s and '90s. Was a difficult time for Welsh rugby, but you need a belief. You need to challenge yourself. You need to stretch yourself, and I think we're seeing that. The Welsh team of late has players that are capable of being world class, and you need world class players. But you don't just become a world class player because I want to be a world class player. It takes hard work, and it has to mean everything to you. And it's when I retired from being an All Black, 11, 12 years of being an All Black, people said to me, "Do you miss it?" And I went, "No." I said, "I had the best time of my life. It was very special. I'm All Black number 871, but I've hung my boots up because I gave everything to that black jersey, and that's what you need. You need people who are totally dedicated to being the best they can be, and that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a great All Black. Don't be good, be great, and that's what I would like to see in the Scarlets. Don't be good, be a great Scarlet. And if you've got everyone going down that way, it's only going to benefit Welsh rugby. If the clubs and the provinces and the regions are strong, that's only going to help Welsh rugby become the number one team in the world.
Yeah, and let's move on to your career now. And I think over in the Northern Hemisphere, we sort of look at the Kiwis and we believe that they almost come out of the womb with a rugby ball in their hand. Was that the case for you?
I don't know if that was the case, but but yeah, I think if you've got a successful national team, it's very aspirational for young boys, and we have a culture in New Zealand where we do a lot of running around, and we have a rugby ball or a football or a cricket ball or a baseball. Kids are very active, and the skill sets are very good at a young age, and we have a very good pathway in terms of identifying talent, making the most of that talent, but then ultimately it's up to the individual how far he wants to go in the game. And if you're good enough and you're dedicated enough, there's pathways to take you right to the top. We have a very good coaching system. The coaches in New Zealand are very good, and I think, as we saw at the last World Cup, that the coaching is really important now. At the start of my career, the coach was almost a figurehead, where now the coach has a major influence, and you saw that in the World Cup. In terms of the job that Steve Hansen and his coaches did on Joe Smith, and then the following week the job that Eddie Jones did on Steve Hansen, and then the final, Rassie Erasmus did a job on Eddie Jones. So it's the coaching is obviously very important.
And we talked about your father, Brian, earlier. Do you know if you were similar players or not?
Well, I tried to be. He was a back. He played
Oh,
at sort of 10, 12, 13. So I, the start of my career, I wanted to be number 10, obviously, like every boy in New Zealand wanted to be a number 10. But I slowly progressed my way into the front row. But Dad wasn't, and I always, Dad said to me, son, I want you to play a team sport and make sure you enjoy it. You don't have to play rugby union. And I think it's probably the best advice, in every sport today, whether it's cycling, cricket, rugby, whatever, is a team sport, and make sure you enjoy it. And if you enjoy it, you're ultimately going to be out there all the time, kicking the ball around, passing the ball around, learning how to kick off both feet, pass off both hands. And that's what my father sort of tried to instill in me.
And what type of father was he? Was he on the touchline shouting at you all the time, or was he quite quiet and give you some advice after the game?
He coached like in Wales. The rugby club is the centre of the community. It was a very, very much community-based game. And, we'd spend all Saturday down at the rugby club, right from 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd be down there. I'd play in the little boys' games, and then I'd go and watch my brother's team play. And Mum would be in the tuck shop and making food for the kids. And then we'd all stay down in the afternoon and watch the senior team play. And then Mum and Dad would go into the clubhouse and have a few drinks, and all the young boys and girls would be outside emulating their whether I was Grant Batty or Gareth Edwards or Phil Bennett. That was what we did. And then at 8 o'clock, pile into the car and head off home and sit in front of the fire. That was our Saturday. It was brilliant.
And your ambition to become a All Black, a capped All Black in 1986 came to fruition. At the age of 23 then, and did you go on that Tour de France that year?
Yes, I did. Yes, I was mid-June. I played my first game against the French, which was one of the greatest days of my life. To actually become an All Black, I can still picture or remember the whistle sounding for the start of the game, and I can still that memory in my head. I'm an All Black now. Wow! But that was the easy part, and then. We won that game, and it was just brilliant. Brian Lahore, the late Brian Lahore, one of our great number 8s, was the coach. He had faith in me. He had coached me at under 16s and under 21s. And to be honest, I wasn't very good in those days. I couldn't throw the ball in, and I think 12 of us got an opportunity because 30 All Blacks had been banned because they went to South Africa. So I think 12 of us made our debut against the French that day, and they were the 5 Nations champions in those days. And we got an opportunity, and I still remember walking into his bedroom that morning, and he had 21 All Black jerseys lying on his bed, ready to present to the team. We went in there individually, and he passed me my first jersey. And every time you play a test match for the All Blacks, you get the right to keep that jersey. And he passed it to me. He said, Fitzy, he said, the first time you pull on this All Black jersey, make a mental note of that feeling. And every other time you pull the jersey on, make sure you recall that excitement you had. In other words, don't ever take it for granted. And as I walked out of the room, clutching my jersey, 871 All Black number, he went, Fitzy, there's one other thing. He said, you are expected to win, which I love. I love him saying that now. I expect the All Blacks to win, which is a huge, huge responsibility. When you take the jersey, you try to give it back in a better state than you find it. I think as Wayne Smith called it, you're polishing the gem. That's your job, to polish the gem. When you've got that jersey, just buff it up a bit, give it a bit of a polish, and then pass it on in a better state.
Yeah,
which I must say, the current All Blacks are doing phenomenally. Even though we lost in the semi-final last year, Steve Hansen, one of our great All Black coaches, has definitely passed on the jersey in a better state than what he found it in. Although it was pretty good when he found it.
And do you remember the Battle of Nantes?
Yes, the Battle of Nantes. That was sort of lives with us. Ironically, that was probably the most violent game I've ever played in. It was almost a turning point, though, Nathan, in terms of that All Black team. was a year out or 6 months out, 7 months out from the first World Cup. At that stage, the first World Cup wasn't even really sort of going to happen. The Southern Hemisphere wanted it, Northern Hemisphere didn't. But it was almost a turning point in terms of the players that played in that game. A lot of them moved on, and a lot of young kids came through. You know, the Michael Joneses of the world, Zinzan, Ruck, those sort of players came into the team in '87. But a lot of them have been on that tour in '86.
Yeah, and obviously, I think you've talked about this a million times, but Andy Dalton gets injured going into the 1987 World Cup. How big an opportunity was that for you? And, you know, was it your chance to take it with both hands?
Well, I was very fortunate, actually, right through my career, and especially in the formative years. You know, I played my first test because Bruce Hamara, I was a reserve. Bruce Hamara, one of our great Maori All Blacks, got injured. And on the Wednesday at training, and that propelled me into that team. I got dropped for the second test against the Australians, and Hicka Reid came in, who was just an idol of mine. He was a great hooker, and I must say that he was when I got in above him for that French tour, he couldn't have been better. It was just such a learning curve for me in terms of the way you treat people, even though you're hugely competitive. The way he looked after me and guided me through those games. And then to the World Cup in '87, Andy Dalton was our captain. He was one of my heroes. He was 10, 12 years older than me. And he was the captain of the team. So just to get into the All Blacks, I was thrilled for that World Cup, to get it in above Hicka Reid, Bruce Hamara. And then for Andy, then to get injured at our first training run. He pulled a hamstring. I think it was 3 or 4 days out from the first game against Italy, the opening game of the World Cup, and poor Andy just never recovered. In those days, we didn't bring somebody else into the team. Steve McDowell was our loose head prop. He was the cover for hooker. So I ended up playing every game in that World Cup. But once again, Andy could not have been nicer in terms of guiding me through it. But it was a big learning for me in terms of, as I said, in terms of the way you treat people.
And do you remember the feelings towards the concept of a World Cup, the first World Cup, and what the players' feelings were? Because it was obviously brand new, a trophy.
I don't really think we knew what we were doing, Nathan. It was just, All Blacks played 6 games, and we had to win 6 games.
Yeah.
And I can always remember Brian Lahore saying to us, you guys, you can make history here by being the first team to ever win the first World Cup. And that was our goal. And, we got to the final, and we played France. And I think France had already played their final the week before against Australia, because Australia were a very good team in '87, '86, '87. Just got undone by a very good French team. We all know how the French can play when they don't think they can win.
Yeah.
And that was our worry really going into that final, really, because the French are a very good team. They'd beaten us in '86, and for us it was a huge challenge, but one that playing in front of your home crowd was just a relief to get it out of the way. And following Monday we were back at work. I'm a builder. I was back on the building site. Craig Green, who always tells that story, he was a roofer. And he was 6 o'clock in the morning in Christchurch, dark, cold, raining morning, standing on the corner of his road, waiting to be picked up with his lunchbox to head off to work. That's just the way it was in those days.
And you talked about the pecking order just now of the hookers, and you sort of got ahead of everyone, and then a certain Warren Gatland was coming just behind you then. What was your relationship like with Warren, and what was he like at a younger age?
Well, Gats, funny enough, Gats and I are exactly the same age, born in 1963. And Gats he came through a very strong system in Waikato, and then played in an unbelievable team. And fortunately, I was in an unbelievable Auckland team. So they were probably our main rivals. Canterbury, Wellington, Waikato and Auckland were probably the top teams in New Zealand in those provincial days. And, we'd go to Eden Park and there'd be 50,000 people at Eden Park for an Auckland Waikato game. And Gats was in a very good front row. He had Purvis, Richard Lowe and Gats in the middle. and Graham Purvis was a very, very good tight head, and we all know how good Lowy was. But Warren was an outstanding hooker, and then went on the tour with the All Blacks. And in those days, you didn't come off unless you were seriously injured. You didn't come off, and I was dogged because I knew how good Gats was, and I didn't want to give him an opportunity. And, even if I popped a rib cartilage or something, I'd be walking around. I was like, oh God, I can't let Gats on. But that's just the way it was, and he was an amazing player, and he was a great All Black too. That's what people forget, just because he didn't play a Test match. He was a great All Black, and he loved the jersey. And obviously took a lot of learnings from the All Blacks. And in those days, we didn't really have big teams in terms of support staff. So a lot of the All Blacks who were school teachers, a lot of them were school teachers like Gats, they'd have to take the warm-ups, or they'd work out drills. And that's probably where he got a lot of his grounding and passion for coaching, who's turned out, as we all know, to be one of the great great coaches of world rugby.
Don't get that mixed up. And he actually said it was because of you that he's become the coach he has, because while he was on the bench, he was able to analyse the game.
Yeah, I suppose we had plenty of time to do that. But, and it's just I feel sad that he with the number of caps the hookers get now, or players get now off the bench. Gats would have had multiple caps if it had been in today's system.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you couldn't defend the World Cup in '91, but you become the New Zealand captain in '92. How proud was your family and your dad, Brian?
Oh, I think everyone was very proud, but it's not something I really wanted actually in '92. Mike Brewer from Otago was the man that Laurie Mains wanted to be captain. And Mike, got injured in the All Black trial, and I was the captain of the other team. There was literally no one else that was there to captain the team, and it took me probably 3 years to feel comfortable with captaining the All Blacks. It definitely made me a better player. I was fitter, faster, stronger. I analysed the game better. I suppose in terms of transcending ages, having to speak to everyone on the team, which is something you don't always do. But yeah, it was a great honour to be the All Black captain. It was a thrill, but it was also a lot of pressure because people expect a lot of the All Blacks within New Zealand.
And in the same year, you compete against the newly crowned world champions in the Bledisloe Cup, and probably one of the greatest Bledisloe series of all time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually. It was, although we lost it, it was a learning curve for us. We won the third test, but the first two tests could have gone either way. But we had a lot of young All Blacks that, Laurie sort of almost changed the way All Blacks were picked. Really, he picked good people and then turned them into great All Blacks, and it took that particular team probably till '94 really to realise that we could be a world-class team. And it was, funny enough, it was back at Sydney when we lost that test, when Jeff Wilson went to score the winning try and George Gregan knocked the ball out of his arms. That was almost a turning point that we got away from that fear of failure. We were able to harness that fear of failure, where a lot of our guys putting the All Black jersey on put them in a shell really, rather than harnessing that fear of failure and wanting to be better. They didn't play like they did for their clubs and their provinces, and it took 2 or 3 years to feel comfortable in that All Black jersey.
And we talked earlier about you looking up to the heroes like Phil Bennett and so on for the Lions, and you welcomed the Lions in '93. Was there much nerves for you going into that Test series?
Well, it's a great honour. As an All Black, you don't really get that many opportunities if you play the Lions once, because they only come to New Zealand now once every 12 years. So for me, and as you said, it's probably the greatest jersey I have in my locker. Yeah. Because it's such a special jersey. Yeah, it's arguably the greatest brand in world rugby, and to get the opportunity to play against the Lions and to play the Lions, and the captain of the Lions was Gavin Hastings, who's a great mate of mine. He'd played for Auckland University team in '87. After the World Cup, he stayed in New Zealand and played in our team. Ironically, we had 4 All Blacks. We had the All Black captain, David Kirk. We had Grant Fox. We had my old mate, who's not with me anymore, John Drake, and me. So there was 4 All Blacks, and we thought, well, that's not good enough to win a club competition. We need one more international. So we got Gavin, who came in as the fullback, and we did win the club competition that year, not surprisingly. But to play against the Lions, we nicked the first test in Christchurch in the last minute with a Grant Fox penalty from halfway, and then went to Wellington, and I played the worst game of my life. It was a shocking performance, and it's a game I remember more than any other game. I remember walking off the field and saying to Gavin, I said, "You watch this little nation of 4 million people turn on us." Because we hadn't delivered a performance worthy of an All Black team, and they did. They turned on us. Luckily, we were given an opportunity a week later, 6 days later, to play at Eden Park, and we luckily won that third test. But it sort of, when people ask me when I retire, what was the game you remember more than any other game you played in? World Cup finals, beating South Africa and a series in South Africa, and I always say 1993. It was the game. It's the game. You ask. My father's not with us anymore, but if you ask Dad, what game he remembers more, he'd say 53 when we lost to the Welsh. And we have a great saying in the All Blacks. Celebrate success, but park it quickly. Remember your losses more than your wins. And I think it's a really good learning in life, really. Sure, celebrate success, but you need to park that quickly and be better tomorrow. The way we did it today is not good enough to win tomorrow, and that's definitely a learning we took out of that game in '93.
And I think the New Zealand public are the only thing I could sort of compare it to is like England fans with a football team. It's like if something goes wrong, it's the end of the world. Why do you think that's the way it is?
Because it means a lot to us. It's it's sport in general. New Zealanders. What they achieve on the world stage is phenomenal for a country of 5 million people. But that's just the way we are. We're hugely competitive people. If we do something, we like to do it well. And it's not just in sport either. In life and business. We're the little brother who wants to box above his weight.
Yeah.
And on a world stage. And we love going to England. We love going to Cardiff Arms. I love going into those environments where we have to quieten the crowd, and when people are like that, and the tradition, I think genetically, the Maoris in New Zealand originally, they were just genetically built to play rugby, and then when the early settlers came to New Zealand in the 1800s. That it was tough times. My grandfather came to New Zealand from Ireland, and to pay for his passage, he had to work on the roads for 2 years, which just made you big and strong. And obviously rugby, because the British brought rugby to New Zealand, and obviously we liked it.
And sticking with the Lions, I talked to Tina Stelp 2 days ago, and he said whenever South Africa or one of the nations come up against the Lions, it almost feels like cheating when 4 nations can come together. Do you ever see a future where maybe Australia, South Africa, New Zealand could come together?
I don't know. I don't know about that. But we had an Anzac test once, where Australia and New Zealand came together. But I don't. The Lions is unique, and we go back to that global window. I'm sure that World Rugby will definitely have a space in the calendar, every 4 years for the Lions, which they have to. It's one of the great traditions of World Rugby.
And of course, New Zealand's relationship with South Africa probably isn't at the best at the minute, is it?
New Zealand's relationship with
South Africa.
Well, it's just it's a time where everyone needs to work together to get the best result. And if that's not having Super Rugby involving South Africa, maybe that's not a bad thing. And you just look at what's happening in New Zealand at the moment in terms of internal competitions. When I was growing up, the Currie Cup was one of the great club competitions of the world. And maybe we need to, simplify things, to have 5 teams playing against each other in New Zealand. That's Super Rugby Aotearoa. It's been brilliant. It's so easy to understand. The players know that for 10 weeks, this is all they're doing. They're playing this. And we have had some great, the rugby coming out of New Zealand at the moment is some of the best rugby I've seen.
Yeah.
And it's entertaining. The viewing numbers are huge, both at the stadiums and then on TV. And that's unfortunately what we need to produce. We need to produce competitions like this that international media are going to want to buy. And at the moment, New Zealand's leading the way.
And sticking with South Africa, obviously you went to the 1995 World Cup. And certain Jonah Lomu dismantled the English in the semi-final. Have you ever seen anything like that on a rugby pitch before in your life?
No, well, funny enough, it was before those games. Even we played Ireland. We played Scotland in the quarterfinal. I think we played Wales. in the pool games also. And Jonah was doing that. We went to the World Cup, and this is where Laurie is almost ahead of his time. Our coach, he said to us in 1992, in 4 years' time, we're going to the World Cup in South Africa. Hard grounds. We need to be fit and fast. And we're going to play this high-tempo game. And then we're going to have 2 nippy little wingers that are going to score all the tries because the defences weren't set up to play this pace of game. So we had Eric Rush and Jeff Wilson on the wing. Eric Rush got injured. Jonah was brought back into the team after being sent to play sevens because he wasn't fit enough. We didn't know he had a kidney disorder and couldn't load fitness. And we got as fit as we'd ever been that World Cup. And went to the World Cup. Rush's injured. Jonah comes in and just blows the world apart and became a global superstar. I'd never seen anything like it. And he was a global superstar. He would be the only global superstar rugby will ever have. I'm sure of that. He just took the world by storm. And, he's sadly missed. But a great All Black, and he did things in those days that no one had ever seen before. No one had ever seen a 6'5.5", 6'5" winger at 110 kilos, running at 10.5 seconds over 100 metres. It was just phenomenal to watch.
And what sort of legacy?
Not play against.
What sort of legacy has he left behind? Because obviously you look at the wingers today, and it's just ridiculous how big the wingers are, isn't it? Yeah,
it is, but there's still places for the Shane Williamses of the world. We saw at the World Cup the Japanese wingers, and it takes all sizes now, which is great. So but I suppose what's changed is the defensive systems. The way teams defend now. The Jonas of the world. You have to work out different ways. You can't just run over people.
And of course, the final was a special day for South Africa as a nation, really, on and off the pitch. But could things have been different if it was a dose of food poisoning?
I don't know. That would have helped. But the whole week was I always look back on things when we haven't achieved. If we've done things differently, how it would have, what we could have done, differently to change the result. But ultimately, it was, I suppose, meant to be. It was a great final. Changed my life in terms of just the intensity, the emotion. The great man Nelson Mandela, to see him walk into the stadium, wearing Francois' number 6 jersey, and what that filled the stadium with. I've never experienced anything like it, even to this day. The power that filled the stadium with, and and I'm lucky enough now to be involved with Laureus, which I'm sure we'll speak about shortly. But he helped change the world, and to see what happened in Tokyo last year with Sia Khaleesi leading the team. It's just fun. Sport unites people, and South Africa has shown that more clearly than anyone in 2 World Cups. What Francois did in '95, and then what Sia did in last year has helped connects people in a good way.
Yeah, and obviously you got redemption the year after in South Africa, becoming the first captain to lead the All Blacks to a Test series in South Africa. How special was that?
It was special because the All Blacks had never done it before. It was probably, we saw this as probably the last opportunity with professional rugby starting, that teams wouldn't get the opportunity to go to South Africa and play four Test matches over 4 weeks, because the first Test at Newlands and Cape Town was the end of the Tri-Nations. Then we started the series. I suppose the best way to sum it up is that as we walked off the field at Loftus Versfeld, one of our great All Black fullbacks, a guy called Don Clark, who's sadly not with us anymore, he came up to me and hugged me, and he said, "Sean, thank you for leading this great All Black team to win a series in South Africa for the first time." He said, "I can go to my grave a happy man, knowing the All Blacks have finally won a series in South Africa," which meant a lot. And I say a great All Black team because that team was a hugely special team. We had John Hart, who was the All Black coach, who just planned everything to the last minute detail. And then we had some players that were some of the greats that the All Blacks had produced. And as you said, to go back there after what happened in '95 and beat the world champions, and they were a great South African team, and to do it in their own backyard was great. And huge respect for each other. New Zealand and South Africa are very similar. We're very dogged. We don't go away. We keep knocking on the door, and that's what they do.
And we talked earlier about your sort of dream of somehow getting on the Arms Park one day. Your final game for the All Blacks was against Wales, but this time at Wembley. Did you know? Good
trivial pursuits question.
Yeah, it was good. Did you know that was going to be your final game for the All Blacks? Because I believe you had a knee injury, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I had a knee injury, and possibly I shouldn't have even gone on the tour. But I got injured in the Tri-Nations in South Africa, funnily enough, and I had the knee operated on before that tour, and that was probably a mistake also. And it just never recovered. And I tried for the whole tour to get on. I played half a game up in the north of England. I can still remember announcing to the team that we played Ireland, which was the first Test match that I was going to miss. And I said to the team, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to play. Almost broke down in tears, saying that. Norm Hewitt got an opportunity and played really well. And then I wanted to play against England at Twickenham. And John Hart said to me, he said, "Okay, we'll give you half a game against Wales and just see how it is." And then I remember walking off the field, and I said to Zinny, my great mate, our number 8, I said, "Zinny," as I sort of limped off the field, I said, "Zinny, this bloody knee," I said, "I can't do what I used to be able to do." And he said to me, he said, "Fitzy," he said, "you need to retire." And it was like, it wasn't quite the answer I was looking for, Zinny. And there was no way I was going to retire. And then on Monday night, we went out to dinner with John Hart, which the two of us, which we did occasionally. And I just thought it was another dinner, captain coach. And he went, "Fitzy," he said, "you need to retire." I said, "No, I'm not retiring." He said, "Well, you're not playing on Saturday." I said, "Hardly, I'm playing on Saturday." He said, "No, you need to retire." I said, "Okay, just give me, I won't play on Saturday, just give me 6 months." And he did, and I didn't recover. But it was a hard decision to let go of something that you've held so dearly for so long. But ironically, it was the best thing that ever happened in terms of retiring. It was a time to retire. Martin Crowe, one of our great cricketers, who's sadly not with us anymore, he rang me on the Friday night before I was going to make this announcement that I was going to have a comeback game against Auckland University playing somebody. And he rang me, he said, "Fitzy," he said, "I've got exactly the same knee problem you have. You need to retire." And it was probably the best advice I ever got. And then, 2 weeks later, I retired.
Yeah. But pretty
And it was
mad.
like a weight off my shoulders. It was because, as I said, I'd had 11, 12 years giving everything I had to the All Blacks. The sacrifices you make, and then to be able to sort of let go of that and sort of have a normal life. I say things like, being able to mow the lawns, being able to put the rubbish out, being able to unpack your toilet bag.
Yeah.
Was just a different life, and it's then you had to retire at the age of 34 and then get a job. It's about the only thing in life where you retire at 34 and then you got to get a job.
Unless you're a footballer.
Yeah. Wow.
But your life after rugby has been quite good as well. Let's be honest. You work with Sky, and obviously you're also chairman of the Laureus Sports Academy. Firstly, what does that role entail?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I'm very lucky. I've got a beautiful wife who was a lawyer, and so we sort of made plans. And I'm a builder by trade, so I sort of did a bit of that. And I suppose I was lucky in terms of rugby, staying in rugby. I stayed in rugby when I retired, and managed the Auckland Blues for 2 or 3 years, the under-21s. And I suppose I just had a number of my former guys I played with and played against just walked away from rugby totally, because that's you talk to Francois now, he just doesn't want anything to do it. He loves watching it, he doesn't want to be involved in it, which is fine. But I just kept that fire burning, I suppose, and then coming to this part of the world in '99, I worked with ITV on that World Cup, first when I'd retired. Since I retired. And then that sort of ignited something. Then we moved up here in 2004 for 2 years. That's all we came up here for, with our 2 young children, to have a bit of a tour around, because although I toured the world playing rugby, you never really got an opportunity to go to other places than the hotel and the rugby pitch. So we did that, and we're still here 16, 17 years later, and it's kept me involved in rugby, the TV work at Sky, during that Super Rugby times, Michael Lyon and myself and James Gemmell and Alex Payne, we'd have breakfast together every Friday morning and Saturday morning at the Sky Studios, and watching rugby, something we all loved doing. And the World Cups with ITV's kept on going. So it's been really good. And then the work with Harlequins since 2008. And I just and now with Scarlets, I just see it as a real opportunity to help make a difference and to be involved, which I'm really enthusiastic about. And then to answer your question in a long-winded way, Laureus is the most unbelievable organisation. I was very fortunate in 2000 to be invited when we set up Laureus 20 years ago. This is our 20th year. And we celebrate excellence in sport. That's what we were set up for, by Johan Rupert from Richmond. We've got 2 amazing founding partners in Richmond and Mercedes-Benz, and MUFG has now come on as a global partner too, out of Japan. And there's 67 of us now, former sports people. And we support an organisation called Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, which helps change the lives of children through sport. And in the 20 years, we've raised over 150 million euros. We support over 200 projects globally that use sport as a mechanism for change, discrimination, all those sort of things we're helping change. And it's a brilliant thing to be part of, and I'm very fortunate now, which is a great honour, to be chairman of the academy.
Yeah, and you're doing an amazing job. And I believe you've got an event with Brian Abana tonight.
We have, yes, we've got an event with him, and which will be nice. It's in Hong Kong, so we're streaming into Hong Kong, and which will be a good event, and hopefully raise a bit of money for the foundation and for Hong Kong rugby.
And is the plan to pick a combined South Africa and New Zealand side?
Yes, we have. We've both done that. We've both submitted our teams, and I just, being nice, I'd pick Brian and my team, and he'd pick me and his team. when I saw the teams, he hadn't picked me in his team, and I had picked him out of just being a nice guy, because to be honest, I played with a lot better wingers than Brian Abana, and he obviously thought that John Smith was a much better hooker than me. But that's just the fun, and Brian's our newest academy member, and he is phenomenal in terms of the work he's done for Laureus. So he's a much better Laureus academy member than what he was as a rugby player.
So the little dig in there. Before we go, is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round?
Sure.
Brilliant. Right. So first, who's the best player you played with?
Good question. I played with a lot. I always say that if I had to go to war tomorrow, I'd take Zinzanbrook.
Oh, good choice. Best player you played against?
I suppose it have to be a hooker. I never played against Ken Owens. I think he would have been quite tough.
The Sheriff.
I think Tommy Lawton from Australia was the toughest hooker I played against.
Best match you've been involved in?
Best match. You mentioned that 92 series in Australia. That was pretty special. 95, just that will never go away. Just a phenomenal place to be. But I think 96 at Loftus Versfeld. That was the most special day, to be involved as an All Black.
Yeah, was that the game where all the players just collapsed at the final whistle?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Best moment of your career?
Best moment of my career? Oh God, I don't know. Becoming an All Black, I suppose. Day one, becoming an All Black, and winning a World Cup in '87. I suppose is pretty cool.
Biggest troublemaker on and off the field?
Richard Lowe was it was trouble in everywhere, every sense of the word. Lowe caused trouble. A great man, a great tourist, but just I'd play against him for Auckland, and somebody would stand on my leg or stand on my back or something. I'd look up, it'd be bloody Lowe. But no, and ironically, as soon as he ran across that white line, he changes the person. He might be a June baby like me.
Best coach you've played under?
Very fortunate. I had some great coaches. I mentioned Brian Lahore, Alex Wiley he sort of changed the mould of coaches. Laurie Mains, outstanding. But I think the one that pressed my buttons and he found me originally was John Hart. What's that?
One who retired you.
Yeah, one who retired me. He started me and retired me and dropped me along the way. But he was brilliant, and that team of '83 that he picked and led by, and dare I say it, my great mate Andy Hayden, who sadly passed away today. It's a great team.
Yeah, and finally,
and a great coach.
And finally, if you weren't a rugby player, what would you be?
If I wasn't rugby, what, in terms of a sportsman or a job?
Yeah.
I think I would have been a full-time builder, building houses, and loved it. During lockdown, I've loved being the handyman around the house. Working in the garden, regrouting the patio. I'm a doer.
Well, Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Absolute pleasure, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
And hopefully, when everything's back to normal, we can get you back on.
Yeah, we'll have a beer down at Connethley when you come to a Scarlets game.
I'll get him in.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Sean.
Okay, buddy.